Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 6, Layers of Darkness. Science fiction, fantasy, time travel. This is the Stories Told podcast, talking about worlds of stories told, from movies to TV shows and, of course, books. I am E.W. Barnes, fiction author and avid fan of great stories. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds, thousands of stories told. Let's begin. Don't forget to vote on what we talk about next. We've got 2 episodes left of The Rings of Power, and then we're done for the season. In the show notes below, there's a link to a private Facebook group where I've posted a poll. You can choose one of the options listed or offer a suggestion of your own. Today, I'm talking about episode 6 of the new Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power, which is streaming now on Amazon. And, as you probably know by now, beyond here there will be spoilers. So if you have not already seen the show and don't want to know what's going to happen, now's the time to click over to a Halloween ambience video. You know, the ones with the kitties wearing little witches' hats. They're so cute. This episode is entitled Udun. Do you remember that word? Gandalf used it while facing the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. "You cannot pass," he said. The orcs stood still, and a dead silence fell. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Arnor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun. Go back to the shadow. You cannot pass." Udun is also mentioned later in The Lord of the Rings in the chapter The Land of Shadow. And between the ends of the arid Lithui, there was a narrow gap, Carak Angren, the Icenmouth, beyond which lay the deep dale of Udun. In that dale, behind the Morannon, were the tunnels and deep armories that the servants of Mordor had made. This episode was deeply engaging and left me almost gasping for breath by the end. It was the coming together of 2 of the main storylines, the siege of Adar and the orcs, and the arrival of Numenor in Middle-earth. Adar and the orcs arrive at the entrance to the tower in which Arondir, Bronwyn, and the refugees are hiding. They break down the door, only to discover it is deserted. One of the things that stood out for me was that Adar was leading from the front as the orcs attacked the tower. It's one of the things that leads me to believe he is not Sauron. There's a line from the chapter, The Siege of Gondor, that describes Sauron's battle tactics. "He is pitted against a foe too great, for one has come that I feared." "Not the Dark Lord?" cried Pippin, forgetting his place in terror. Denethor laughed bitterly. "Nay, not yet, Master Peregrine. He will not come save only to triumph over me when all is won. He uses others as weapons." As the orcs enter, Arondir shoots an arrow that triggers a trap that the refugees have set, and the tower comes tumbling down, crushing many of the orcs and villagers gone bad. The refugees have fled the tower and now return to their village to fortify it against the siege to come, while Arondir takes the sword hilt to hide it so that Adar cannot have it. When the orcs come as night falls, the villagers fight valiantly and appear to win until they realize the dead are bleeding red and not the black blood of orcs. They have killed the villagers gone bad, who Adar sent ahead as shock troops. The only thing that took away from this scene is that once the villagers recognized they had been fighting their own people and not orcs, why did they not immediately take up defensive positions to repel the next wave that everyone knows is coming? And it did, and things get really bad. Bronwyn is shot, and Theo and Arondir work to save her, but Adar and the orcs break into the tavern where the refugees are barricaded. Theo, who spied on where Arondir had hidden the hilt, offers it to Adar to save his mother's life. Adar takes the hilt and leaves the tavern, just as we hear the thunder of hoofbeats. Numenor has arrived. A few things stood out for me in the Numenor storyline. The visuals of the ships of Numenor on the ocean are incredibly beautiful, and there was a stunning sunrise. Galadriel, Halbrand, and the Numenoreans look at a map of the Southlands, which, if you remember the maps from the book, is a map of Mordor. Isildur, in a conversation with Galadriel, says a line from the book. "Keen are the eyes of the elves," which was spoken by Aragorn to Legolas in the chapter The Riders of Rohan. There's more slow-mo, this time of the ride of the Numenorean cavalry, with Galadriel in the lead, and some fun elven gymnastics. Adar grabs a horse and rides off, seemingly trying to escape with the hilt, with Galadriel hot in pursuit. Halbrand goes after Galadriel, and, as I believe Halbrand is Sauron, I was certain he was going to kill Adar before Adar could tell Galadriel that. Halbrand threatened to kill Adar, and Galadriel stops him. Later, when Galadriel is interrogating Adar, Halbrand stops her from killing Adar. Her hatred of him is strong, and she tells Adar that she will not rest until all orcs are dead. Another thing that stood out is that Adar asks Halbrand, "Who are you?" before Halbrand leaves, and Halbrand does not answer. The battle is won, the orcs are captured, and Queen Muriel declares to the men that their king has returned. Bronwyn looks at Halbrand and asks him if he is the king they were promised, and he says yes. Promised by who? Yikes. And just as we are settling into a happily ever after feeling, we learn that the hilt was carried away by one of the villagers, who uses it to release a flood of water into all those tunnels that the orcs had dug. Tunnels that lead to Mount Doom. The floodwaters rush into the magma chamber, triggering an eruption that sends a pyroclastic wave over the village. So what do we know at the end of this episode? The refugees won, and then lost. The Numenoreans won, and then lost. Galadriel won, and then lost. And how did this episode impact my Sauron theories? I still believe that Halbrand is Sauron. Here's what I've got so far in support of this theory. We first meet Halbrand on the wreck of a ship that has been attacked by a sea serpent. We know from the Lord of the Rings that Sauron poured his essence into the One Ring, and that evil things were drawn to the One Ring, like the Watcher in the water outside the doors of Moria. What if the sea serpent attacked because it was drawn to Halbrand? Halbrand goes to Numenor, where he tried to find work as a blacksmith, and we know Sauron had the skills to make the One Ring. In Numenor, we see Halbrand fight off several men, including brutally breaking one man's arm, as if he had superhuman strength. We also see several examples of an extremely persuasive personality. We see him resist returning to Middle-earth and then finally giving in, because he had no choice if he were to maintain the fiction of being Halbrand, a man. And then there's Adar asking Halbrand, "Who are you?" Why would Adar care who he was unless he could somehow sense Halbrand's true nature? And I think Halbrand stopped Galadriel from killing Adar because he saw an opportunity to perhaps turn her to his cause, to corrupt her as Adar had been corrupted, through the darkness and anger already in her heart. After they left Adar, they sat together and talked about the connection they shared when they were working in concert to catch Adar. There was an almost romantic chemistry to the moment. Whoa. Imagine how powerful Sauron would be with Galadriel at his side. I titled this podcast episode Layers of Darkness because the story is steadily descending from perceived victories into grimmer and uglier places. From the battle of the villagers killing their neighbors, to the malice Adar brings out in Galadriel, to the eruption of Mount Doom, which plunged everything into night. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give this episode a 10. And so, for now, there is only one question to be answered. Besides our main characters, did anyone survive the eruption? And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to vote in the poll on the Facebook group. And join me next time when we talk about The Rings of Power, Episode 7. See you then.